Hello and welcome to George's section of the Times. So today we're going to be talking about the brand new sort of taxation on some of the more wealthier people in this country. So we'll be talking with a man. So please come on in here and we'll and just sort of begin talking about the situation you have here. Well, basically, how this is running is that there's been a recent new announced tax on the wealthy. And what this will mean is that it'll increase the income the government actually has to sort of, make this decision. So the question, of course, is, would they allow it? Well, I mean, did you not hear about that though? That we recently got access to multiple things, including our tax laws. Yeah, I know that, but the thing is, the problem with that was that it wasn't a permanent power. Unlike other things, that power could technically be removed with just a bill. Technically, I've read the fine print. I don't think many of the politicians have actually read the fine print, but obviously it doesn't explicitly say this. The British are never going to actually openly say this is what they're saying. But at the crux of the matter, when you dig deep, when you dig very, very deep into the agreement, how it works is this: the agreement that they signed actually with Stormont stated that they could have this, but essentially the undertone of that was they could have it, but technically it could be revoked at any moment. I don't actually have it quoted here because I wasn't actually allowed access to it for long periods of time. But basically the gist of it basically means that if they decided to, they could revoke that act and then, just sort of make an amendment. And the thing is, that's the sort of issue. Obviously an amendment is with the Constitution, but you know what I mean? It will be very easy for them to do this. And at the end of the day, if you have something which is very easy for them to do, building up a lot of this sort of stuff, having a government spend a lot of time on this, the problem is if there are a lot of wealthy people in the British Parliament at the moment, and if they fear that the sort of the sights of the English people might be like, oh well, look, we not only do we have other countries that are doing this, but we've got a country in our own kingdom. We own this country technically. And I know a lot of people don't really want to admit that here, but technically they do. Would you like to sort of admit to yourself that they basically own us? I don't know. We're more of a cooperation. No, there's a centre for a Westminster Parliament in England. It's pretty plain that they've got all the power. So it's not a democracy really, as the politicians have said, but there is obviously the democracy you have here, and that's something which they want to preserve, and I agree with that there. And my only problem is that it's all well and good to be like, okay, so we're going to tax all these wealthy people, but the problem is that if the basically senior people in the British government go, oh look, the British people and the people of England are thinking, okay, Northern Ireland, we basically own that, they have this tax system, it's working out for them. Our system is obviously a little bit more, I'm not saying anyone is against us or anything. I'm just saying that sometimes some people think, oh, it's a little bit more advanced. And in a way, yes, it is. Other people might argue against me, but I just say there are arguments there. And my point is this: that people will possibly go in England, we want this too. And if there are wealthy people in the government who go, no, we want Northern Ireland to have that, we don't really care, because if there's wealthy people there, as long as we are friends with them or something, which there may be people with friends with them. I know that there was more than 10 different ministers who voted against it within these parties, that were basically their entire motivation was basically because their friends would be affected. I think one man, Lord Somerset, his friend owns a massive factory here. But it's not an indigenous factory. It's not a factory that would be protected under the sort of own your own government type thing. I think this bill though is a bit against multinationals, which is a thing like that's gonna harm, because there are a lot of people in the English community who are against that sort of thing because they've got ties with these multinationals, and a lot of times they want to reduce the corporation tax for external businesses as well. I think it was a bit of a kind of a it's a double-edged sword to create a new type of tax where it's like you tax your own companies one thing and you tax external companies that come in another thing, because there's ways around that under the current rules that they've set out, that they're planning out. There are ways around that, and that's a problem. So obviously I just think that there may be an issue down this line, because I have seen that there are some people who might be a bit disappointed with this, because it might be successful, but I doubt it will be as successful as people are expecting, because there are, as I said, there are loopholes in certain laws that obviously you could argue you can't really remove them. You just can't. And that's not their fault, really. That's not their fault at all. But, you can't really remove them. And then there's also the fact that if there are too many people affected by this that have friends in Westminster, then they might get the law they might just get their agreement pulled, and then we lose all of this. I think it's very similar to the educational system. If they don't like it, then they can pull it. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's been recent rumblings that this could be very, very, very dodgy, because it could mean that there's an entire sort of system might change. The taxing of the wealthy. I think you're right there. What do you think of the fact that there's actually current plans now to have the system whereby you can have the sort of area where people of higher wealth will be, like the higher you go, you will be affected more. Like, what was it again? I think it's if you earn 5 million a year, you have to give away 3 million of that. Yeah, it's basically how it's working is that people basically don't really want to pay taxes. And that's all well and good when you're lower down, when you're kind of basically, you're scrimping for food, and there's all this, and you're getting into trouble with rent, and there's all these little problems, because, you have to pay off this money. And it may not just be for tax, it may be because, you can't get a mortgage down, so your rent is just, you're funneling rent money into someone else's pocket, and you're not paying off a mortgage. So at the end of the day, you have no house, even though you've essentially paid for one over this period of time. And I think that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing there. I think the bank should definitely allow more mortgages, but I think they should scale it so that they shouldn't just be like, a financial crisis where they just allow all houses. No, you have to take it in between. But if someone has the potential to pay rent for all this time, if they have the potential to pay rent for all this time, if someone is paying rent, then give them that mortgage realistically, because you can see they can pay for the mortgage because they paid rent, and that's, you got that money a lot of the time. There are a few times that we have landlords here that are just basically making money off just renting property. But my point is that at the end of the day, there are going to be issues there, because taxes they generally hit the lowest person worst. Because the person who's the lowest might be facing various different issues because of this, because of the taxes. But if you come up to someone who's earning 5 million a year, 5 million a year, like, come on. If someone says to you, you're earning 5 million a year, you have to give us 3 million of that. Like, if you're complaining about that, that's all well and good. Yeah, I earned 5 million, but what happens when you think about that in realistic terms? You got 5 million. 5 million is more than most people will ever get in their entire lifetime. Like, people won't make 5 million in their lifetime. Ever. Most people won't. And that's like someone working at, a steady job. So, that's someone who's working a steady job. That's not someone who's, has to, get social benefit or whatever the case may be because, they can't keep a job. That's someone who actually keeps a job all the way through. That's someone who's able to buy or rent their own home or whatever the case may be. And let's just admit it, that's an issue. You can't talk about how horrible taxes are to you when you're facing the situation where, like, I understand, we all want to live the high life. We all dream of the times that, where you're able to, never work again, or, work, low period of time. And when you are working, maybe work from home, or, don't need to work as hard, have a nice swim in the pool if that's your sort of fancy, buy a beachfront, not in this country, obviously, abroad. And there's all those sort of things. And I understand that that's what, you want to dream about and all these sort of things, but you're talking about a lot of money here. And at the end of the day, if you're living in a country, I know you might argue, oh, they might leave, but why would you leave? Because you're living in a country, and the country is in a bit of a dodgy place. Now, the best situation, actually, to solve issues that need to be solved, a lot of issues in this world can be solved, but they require a lot of money. But then they can be managed. They can be, let's say there's an issue and it's increasing in its urgency. You can manage it. You can try and bring it down, but you'll never bring it down to full, because that's that problem. It's already happened. If you take, obviously, the ocean's full of plastic. You can stop producing plastic and all that stuff, but you also have to take the plastic out of the ocean, and that's a little bit of a problem. You have to do that. So there's no point just saying, okay, well, we'll borrow some money, so let's stop producing plastic. You have to do both. Okay, you have to stop producing plastic and you have to take the plastic out of the ocean. You have to do both. If you just do one, I guess, taking the plastic out of the ocean probably less efficient than just, you're probably better off stop producing all plastic. But what I mean, the damage is continuous, and you just halting it a little bit. No, if you have money and that goes to a government which doesn't pay its ministers, which those ministers are actually planning on doing, just pay its ministers high fees, tries to cut the bureaucracy, tries to cut the whole job for the boys, all that sort of things, then you can actually properly start to look at some possible benefits. And so if you're a millionaire and someone says to you, you earned 5 million this year, you have to give 3 million of that to the government. That 3 million could build, houses for the homeless for almost the entire country. That's just a fact. It's close to that number. I'm not sure, I don't have the figures on me right now, but you know what I mean? It's that kind of situation. You have got money, well, you have a lot of these things, a lot of wealthy people these days, they're giving money to charity because, they did technically earn it off the backs of others, and by them taking it, you are technically, taking money off others. So, what I'm saying is you're keeping that money, so by keeping that money, you're essentially just, you're keeping it. And the situation you have here, like, you can't really go too far, I guess, but if I tell you that, you can build a house for this amount of money that you're paying in tax, that's amazing. Imagine being able to say that the amount of money you spend in tax has been able to build houses for people in need. That means you're making a fortune, basically. So I don't really want to be mean. I want to sound kind of mean or anything. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm just saying dry your eyes up just a little bit, because I understand if you're lower, yeah, I understand why you'd be annoyed. I understand all that, because at the end of the day, sure, you're going to be affected by that and all that sort of stuff. But if you're in the system, whereby you're saying, I'm earning this amount of money, I'm earning Y, Z, all the rest, then, I don't earn that much money. I think the last year I earned, I earned about maybe 10 grand, something like that, and I'm technically a high earner, I'm not earning the tremendous amount and technically with this tax bill, I would be doing better, because the benefits of it are quite large, If your gross pay is 10,000 like mine, you're currently walking away with about, with this new tax bill, you're currently walking away with maybe 8 or 7,000 of that. and that's better, if you're the planned tax bill. I think for people who are, if you're earning less than 1,000 a year, you're almost tax free. Obviously, they do say there will be increased monitoring of people's income, and those who are punished for, those who are, who do, try to hide how much money they have coming in, may face a little bit of a problem of a situation with which, where if you're earning, basically how it works is, if you're hiding your earnings and you're actually in a higher bracket than you are, then you are currently, then you can face a bit of time, if if they find you guilty of deliberate intent there. So basically that's how it works. If you've been thinking that, well, yeah, I think that at the end of the day this is a good thing, but I think it's a good thing, really. Well, sure, that's good then. Anyway, so thank you for being in the studio today with us. Also, thank you to everyone who viewed the video, and please, if everyone viewed the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if not, or maybe you have, then you could go ahead and view other videos, manually available, and a new one come out all the time. I guess, of course, if you don't want to view other videos, and you don't want to view any new ones that'll come out after this one, well, bye-bye, I guess forever, and just enjoy the rest of your existence, I guess.